Hey there, guys. So I want to thank you, as always, for taking the time to check out this week's live stream, where we're going to be, of course, going over the topic of supersets and drop sets to maximize muscle growth. So, of course, before I do get started, I do want to mention my website, bponlinefitness.com. Again, guys, there is a free fitness blog that I upload to each and every Friday on there, as well as getting updates on live streams. I usually upload the live streams that I record here on Wednesday to the website on the homepage so you can watch them there. And the live streams do also get archived on YouTube. Another thing I want to mention, somewhat outside of my website, is my YouTube channel, which I just recently posted a video that's not a live stream or a short, but is an original video I posted discussing the topic of sleep. It's roughly 5 to 6 minutes long, and it's definitely a topic that's very informative. I believe you'll find it helpful. I talk about basically how cortisol affects muscle growth as well as how it, of course, hinders it, as also talking about basically having a proper sleep routine, winding down before you sleep and things of that nature. So check that live stream out as usual, or excuse me, check that video out. As usual, check out the live streams there. Um, I also do want to mention that my YouTube channel has been growing quite a bit. I am at 1,120 subscribers on there now. So it is growing quite a bit. It's over the past few months, it has grown since I've really been putting a lot of emphasis on my channel. So definitely check that out. Um, as always, if you have a topic, let me know and I will discuss it. I would love to hear any topics you want me to discuss, of course, related to fitness, nutrition, and recovery. So, with all that being said, guys, let's go ahead and talk about today's topic on supersets and drop sets. So, there's going to be a few different points that I'm going to be covering with this topic, and of course, we're going to dive into each of these different points and you'll understand exactly what these mean. And I'll, of course, describe them and give you a better idea on how to understand these two methods. So, we're going to go over what are drop sets and supersets, the science behind training, or excuse me, time under tension, as well as the types of supersets and when to use them, drop set variations for advanced lifters, and when and how to use these techniques and more. So there's going to be more topics that I'm going to discuss here on on these 2 points. So definitely, wait to the end because I will explain more topics in relation to these points. So let's go ahead and get started by really focusing on defining exactly what are drop sets and supersets. So both of these methods are very powerful. And what I want to mention sort of in advance as we're talking about these points is that keep in mind that depending on your type of training, these methods may not be necessary. These are somewhat considered more advanced, not so much when we're talking about supersets. Drop sets is considered a more advanced, I would say, technique than supersets. But I'll explain, of course, what these methods mean. So basically, these methods are really good for breaking through plateaus, enhancing hypertrophy, which of course is the muscle gain process, as well as creating a more time efficient workout and helping to intensify training without adding more sets. So if you're wanting to really help to break a plateau, or if you're wanting to add a little bit of change in intensity in your existing routine, these can be great options. And again, keep in mind that these can also be time efficient, especially in the case of supersets, because with supersets, you're performing two workouts simultaneously, basically back to back. So, drop sets, let's go ahead and start with drop sets. Drop set is a training method where you perform an exercise to failure, then reduce the weight and continue without rest, repeating for 1 to 3 drops. So, defining drop sets, it's really simple, the concept of it. So basically what you're doing, if you've heard the term training to failure is basically training till you can't lift anymore, till it's to the point to where your muscles are just giving out. That's what it means to train to failure. So what you're going to do is you're going to basically start with a specific weight. So for example, let's start with like talking about, you mainly do this with more barbell based workouts, but you can do it in other exercises. So let's say, just for an example, you start with lifting roughly 200 pounds when you're doing a barbell bench press. So basically, with that, what you're going to do is perform as many reps as possible with those 200 pounds until you reach failure. And then when you're getting into the next set, you're going to drop a fraction of the weight depending on how much you want to drop. I mean, this can vary depending on how much weight you're lifting, but you're going to drop a fraction of that weight and then you're going to go back into the workout. Of course, do the bench press with that lighter weight and then go as many reps as you can until you reach failure again, and then you're going to drop the weight again. So that's basically what a drop set is. You're just training to failure with one specific weight. In between the sets, you're going to drop the weight a little bit, train to failure again, drop the weight, and you're basically going to repeat that cycle in each set. So that's basically what a drop set is. So supersets is one I've touched on before, and it's likely, especially with my clients, they know a lot about this particular technique. And basically, what supersets is a technique where you perform two exercises back to back with no rest between them. So usually when we're talking about supersets, these workouts are combined with, for example, a lot of times whenever I program my clients with particular exercises, for example, I'll usually do a strength endurance phase as one of the phases of workouts as they're doing their progression. So in this phase, the main focus is to combine both strength-based workouts as well as more stability-based workouts. So a good way to sort of understand the difference here is that what I would combine as far as a drop set is a workout. Let's say we're talking about a legs-based workout routine. So let's say we're doing a dumbbell squat. So that would be considered more of a strength-oriented workout. Whereas what we're going to combine it with is going to be a little bit opposite. So with that dumbbell squat, maybe we would combine that as a superset with a single leg squat or anything that requires a little bit more stability. There's various different workouts that you could combine with that exercise. But that's sort of an example to give you an idea as to how supersets are combined. They're going to basically complement each other. When you're doing supersets, you want to make sure that those exercises are complementing each other in a specific way. When I'm doing strength endurance phases, a lot of times supersets are incorporated, and that's the main focus with the strength endurance phase is of course to build strength, but also at the same time focus on stability because from that particular phase, like the first phase of training, and I'm basing this of course off the NASM OPT model, which is how I do my specific training. The first phase of training is stabilization endurance, where we're focusing primarily on challenging stability. So when you're going into strength endurance, which is the next phase, it's combining that stability based exercise along with strength based exercise. And that's the main focus. So when you're doing supersets, you don't want to just randomly put exercises together. You do want them to complement each other in a certain way in order for them to effectively, work towards your particular goal. So I know I kind of went off a little bit there, but I just wanted to mention that. So another point here, and I know that this is still somewhat connected, of course, to the topic we're talking about, which is supersets and drop sets, especially in the main, the main focus, of course, on drop sets is training to failure. And so, with training to failure, a lot of times that's putting more tension on the muscles. And that's kind of where time under tension sort of plays into this particular topic. So, that's why I do want to discuss time under tension briefly. I have mentioned time under tension before, but I do want to touch on it again because it does have sort of a relation to what we're talking about today. So, muscle damage happens, and this is a natural part of any sort of workout. Your muscles are going to get damaged as you're working them out. So, muscle damage happens through longer time under tension, which is going to increase micro tears, which leads to more growth potential. So, I've touched on this before in a previous stream where I've talked about time under tension. But when you're breaking down muscles, that's a necessary part of the process. When we talk about muscle damage, that's not a bad thing. It's a part of the process into those muscles being able to build back stronger and, of course, helping with the hypertrophy process. So, metabolic stress, of course, it builds up lactic acid, which triggers the hypertrophy pathways. So, motor unit recruitment, this means slower reps activate more muscle fibers. This is another thing to keep in mind too, is that when you're performing your workouts, make sure that you are performing them in a slow and controlled manner. You're going to really activate more muscle fibers when you're doing slower movements than you would if you're doing really fast reps. And I've mentioned this before, but this is a pet peeve of mine with a lot of people that work out is that they rush through their reps so quick. You've got to take your time because the more time you spend in the workout, as far as that time and attention in your reps, it's going to help really maximize muscle growth. So the total time a muscle is under strain during a set measured in seconds per rep leads to total reps. So an example would be 3 seconds down, 1 second pause, 2 seconds up. This is 6 seconds per rep, which is 10 reps, 60 seconds of time under tension. And that's basically how you calculate that. Now, when we're seeing 3 seconds down, 1 second pause, 2 second up, that's basically your tempo. And this is something I've been incorporating into my workouts to explain to my clients to be more mindful in how you're going through the exercise, how long you're spending in each particular phase, because these are all phases that you go through in every workout. When you're doing a rep, you go through an eccentric phase, which is your lowering phase. You go through the isometric phase, which is more of a pause based phase. It's the phase between the eccentric and the concentric, which is the lowering phase of, or excuse me, the raising, I should say. So you have a lowering, a pausing, and then a raising and returning, to normal positioning, I should say, your starting position. So that's what it means when we're sort of understanding this. And when you're adding that up, that's explaining the time under tension. How much time you're spending under tension really makes a difference in how much you're going to activate, of course, those muscle fibers that wouldn't activate if you were doing fast reps. Because, like I've mentioned before, when we're talking about top one and top two muscle fibers, usually the top one muscle fibers are only going to activate when we're doing really fast movements. But when you're doing a more intense base workout, you're going to have more of those top two fibers. And those top two fibers are going to help a ton with that muscle growth. So keep that in mind. So, time of supersets and when to use them. So, of course, I did touch on supersets a little bit. And the main thing with supersets that can be very beneficial is they do save time. So if you're short on time in your exercises, and you're wanting to, have a good routine, but also really get through your routine a little bit quicker, this can be a great option. But at the same time, this may not be for everybody because this can be an intense method depending on, where you're at in your routine. So I would say, start slow if you're going to try doing supersets. So again, this saves time and increases training density. During hypertrophy or fat loss phases, this can be a great option. It also helps to target weak points and increase muscle pump in the workout. And then for advanced lifters seeking intensity without adding more sets, this is another sort of way that you can add progression into your routine. Instead of just focusing just on adding sets, you could combine, two workouts together to do a superset, which kind of increases that intensity in your exercise. So here's an example of how supersets work. So with exercises, these are different sort of methods. So with the antagonist, agonist, pre-exhaust, and post-exhaust, these are different forms of workouts. With the agonist and antagonist, the way that you sort of understand these 2 points, I'm going to explain what these mean. So with one method, what you're going to do is focus on an exercise. Like I mentioned, a lot of times you want the exercises to work together in a certain way. And with the antagonist, you're doing sort of these two different movements. So you're doing a bench press and a barbell row to combine as superset. So those workouts are they are somewhat opposite from each other, but they are still focusing on, of course, the upper body movements. So this is for time efficiency, of course, and upper body balance. An agonist workout, again, an example here is an incline press with a chest fly. And what you're noticing there is that these two workouts are primarily targeting the chest. So they're focusing on that one particular muscle group. Whereas with the antagonists, we're still focusing on a specific group of muscles, but we're targeting opposites. So a bench press is going to target the chest, a barbell row is going to target mainly the back. So that's what you're kind of seeing there is that they're still complementing each other. They're upper body workouts, but they're targeting opposite muscles. That's what the antagonist like an antagonist based workout would be. And the agonist is two workouts targeting the chest here, as an example. They're two, in conjunction with each other. We're focusing on chest because the incline press is primarily engaging the chest, and the same with the chest fly. We're oscillating that muscle. So this particular type of method with the agonist sort of workout is to isolate and fatigue one muscle group. Again, keep that in mind. Pre-exhaust, so this would be a cable fly and a bench press. Again, you're seeing a little bit of a difference here, but we're still focusing on basically the same muscle group. So we're using a cable workout in conjunction with a barbell based workout. And this can help to improve mind muscle connection with the pre exhaust. Post exhaust, for example, this could be like a finisher sort of phase in your workout. This would be combining squats along with leg extensions. So, again, like I mentioned before, with these exercises, you're sort of combining those two, methods. We're still focusing on engaging the muscles, but we're still making sure that it's structured. Like with the squats and the leg extensions, we're targeting the lower body. We're focusing on the legs. Cable fly and bench press, we're still focusing on the chest. So that's what I'm trying to get across here is that you want to make sure that your supersets are really combined properly and they're programmed properly and really, go together. You don't want to have something that's completely opposite of what you're targeting. You want to make sure that it sort of stays in that, particular sort of exercise or sort of split that you're working on. Like with upper body, you could still combine opposite workouts, but you want to make sure that the workouts you're combining are still in that same area. If you're focusing on like a upper and lower routine, like with the bench press and barbell row, that's what you're going to focus on is you want to make sure to still get that overall routine, you want to make sure you combine them correctly. So I hope that's not confusing. I'm just trying to explain, what that means when you're doing this. You don't want to just do it randomly. You want to do it properly to where it's going to help, especially depending on your goals you're working towards. So drop set variations for advanced lifters. So these are more advanced based drop set methods. So keep that in mind that this is not for everyone. Like I've discussed, the same with supersets. Supersets may not be for you, and that's okay. There's all kinds of different variations when it comes to so many different, methods into how you want to approach your workouts. So again, going over the standard drop set, like I discussed, is performing the set to failure. You're reducing the weight by 20 to 30%, and you're continuing immediately and repeating for 2 to 3 sets, 2 to 3 times. So this is great for hypertrophy and of course burn. So mechanical drop set, this is another method that is in the same sort of vein as a drop set. You're keeping the same weight but you're changing the grip, angle, or position to make the movement easier. So for example, with this, you would do an incline dumbbell press with a flat dumbbell press. That's what you're changing there, is that you're still doing sort of that drop set method, but you're changing the type of exercise. Well, you're still staying in the same exercise, but you're changing the type of angle or the type of grip that you're doing in the workout. So that's incline dumbbell press with a flat dumbbell press. So that's sort of you're doing an incline with a flat base workout. So this maintains load while shifting leverage. Rest pause drop set is performing a set to near failure and resting 10 to 15 seconds, squeezing out more reps with the same weight or slightly lighter. So understand with this, it's basically like the way I describe this is kind of like in between. It's like the between of a drop set, I guess is the way you can describe it, because you're still doing a drop set, but you're kind of pausing in between that set for a few seconds, and then you're going back into the workout. So it's kind of like you're in the middle of that particular set, if that makes sense, but you're doing a pause in between. So that's basically what that is. That's going to boost strength, endurance, crossover. So again, this is not something that's necessary for everybody. These are really good options if you want to sort of challenge yourself, add a new, variation to your routine, and add a little bit more of a challenge. So that's sort of what these methods are. Again, these are for more advanced lifters, so just keep that in mind. So, when and how to use these techniques. So, I did discuss again, we're talking about these methods, you know, what is the optimal time, to use these particular methods. And I did discuss a little bit about supersets where that is more time efficient. And again, with drop sets, that's of course for advanced lifters, but it can help with if you're kind of in a point to where you're plateauing or anything of that sort. The same with supersets. So when should you use supersets in your routine? So again, this is to save time and increase training density. This is during the hypertrophy or fat loss phase again, and then for antagonist pairing workouts. Again, antagonist is opposite muscle groups, but still sort of engaging the same area. So when we're talking about, like arms, biceps and triceps workouts being combined together, or also a same muscle overload. So how to use this, of course, you pair two exercises back to back, minimal rest. You could choose an antagonistic superset, which is chest and back, an agonist superset, which is leg press and walking lunges, as well as an upper and lower superset, which is squats and push-ups. So with this, you want to rest 30 to 60 seconds between those supersets. And then we're talking about drop sets, when to use those. So this is at the end of a set or final working set to include metabolic fatigue. This can extend time under tension without increasing sets. So again, while we touch time under tension is that reasoning. So this can help for isolation or machine-based exercises. This is a great option on when to use it. So how to use it, of course, you're performing that set to failure or near failure and reducing weight by 20 to 30%, then continuing reps and repeating 2 to 3 total drops without resting. This can be ideal for leg extensions, lateral raises, and cable curls. So I did sort of want to go over it again, getting an overview of these two methods so you have a clear picture on when and how to use them. So the science of intensity. So when we're talking about, again, the topic we've been talking about, when we're talking about superset and drop sets, intensity is a big factor in these. And again, when we're wanting to overcome a plateau, or when we're wanting to challenge ourselves in a routine, these are great options. So mechanical tension is sustained load on the muscle. So again, when we're having more time under tension, again, keep in mind time under tension is how long we're staying, we're keeping that muscle under pressure. So the sustained load on the muscle is leading to deeper muscle fiber recruitment. So more muscle fibers are being engaged. Metabolic stress, again, is buildup of lactic and hydrogen ions and cellular swelling. This leads to anabolic signaling. This is the process where our helping to really signal that muscle growth in the body. Muscle fiber fatigue, as I discussed, more muscle fibers are being engaged. So it pushes beyond those top one fibers, which are usually used in lower intensity exercise, but it's allowing for more top two fibers, fast twitch fibers, leading to more growth potential. So time under tension again is extending sets, increasing cellular signaling for muscle repair and growth. And it also leads to a hormonal response, which is leading to elevated testosterone, as well as growth hormone, IGF-1, and just for overall intense training, you're going to get a hormonal response from exercise. So that's another thing to keep in mind is that when you have a more increased intensity, it has a lot of benefits. But of course, like I mentioned, be cautious and do this when you feel it's appropriate, when you feel like you're at the point to where you've really got adjusted enough to your workouts to where you can increase that intensity. So again, I do want to go over this again before we sort of end off here. Smart programming for supersets and drop sets. So with these, again, I've discussed these two methods. We've went over pretty much everything when it comes to these methods, but I do want to overview again when to best use these and how to integrate them into your program. So, of course, this is for more time efficient hypertrophy sessions. Hypertrophy, again, is the focus of muscle gain. It's the focus of, physique, aesthetics, things like that. When we're focusing on hypertrophy, supersets are a great option. This is increasing volume and intensity, and again, this is best when you're combining antagonistic muscle pairing. However, that's not the only method. You can combine other methods when you're doing supersets. So you use how to program this is to use during accessory or secondary lifts. And of course, having a rest of 30 to 60 seconds between supersets is most optimal. We're talking about drop sets. The best it's used for is the end of a set, finisher, or final working sets. So this can be done more when you're getting to the end of one specific exercise. Again, this is more, that's not to say you can't do this with other methods, but this is more isolation or machine-based movements that you're doing with this particular workout. And this is leading to more muscle burnout and extended fatigue. Again, drop sets are going to be a more intense method versus supersets. So, how to program, of course, you're performing one set to near failure. And then, of course, you're dropping that weight, as I mentioned, 20 30%, and continuing on with your reps until you reach failure again. And you're doing 2 to 3 drops max with no rest between those drops. So that's how that drop set is going to work. So again, just keep that in mind for when you want to integrate that into your routine and how to integrate that into your overall routine and programming. Alrighty, guys. So thank you as always for checking out this week's live stream. I hope that you found this helpful and valuable. Again, I enjoy talking about these different topics, especially when we're talking about, the different aspects of weightlifting, because there's so many different methods out there. When you feel like you're reaching a plateau or you feel like you're struggling, with specific, progression in exercises, there's a lot of ways you can change your routine. And that's what I wanted to discuss today is give you an overview on what you can do to sort of expand your horizon when it comes to, changing intensity in your exercises. So thank you guys once again for taking the time to check this out. I do have my contact information here on screen. Again, my website is bponlinefitness.com. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and let me know. You can leave a comment in this video. But thank you guys once again. I will have another live stream next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. That live stream is in the works, and I will share that live stream with you guys likely on Friday is when I'll have that posted, and you can RSVP to that. But thank you guys once again. I really appreciate your time. Again, check this out on YouTube. Of course, if you miss any of the live streams, be sure to check them out on YouTube. I'll have them posted. But thank you guys, and I will see you guys again in the next live stream. So thank you guys once again.